Hi, everyone. It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. Welcome to my takeout, Emil Amok's takeout. Man, what a weekend. And when we had the Pope's funeral, that kind of staggered me a little bit to see. And if Donald Trump fell asleep, I mean, how do you think I was trying to deal with it? The funeral was on at 1 a.m. Pacific time, and I'm trying to deal with the homily was great. Made me think about the great man that Francis was. He talked about the torch of hope. I thought it was a hopeful homily. And then we had that picture of Donald Trump, even though he had fallen asleep or wearing the wrong things, he wasn't wearing black. That picture of Trump and Zelensky getting together, who knows if it meant anything. And we saw today that Russia has offered a unilateral ceasefire, which we know doesn't mean anything. I mean, Ukraine says, hey, unilateral ceasefire, conditional, 3 days. We need an unconditional ceasefire. And of course, Trump has nothing to say because he has no control over Vladimir Putin. He wants to control the world, but this is just his 99th day. I have more to say about the 100th day tomorrow. But all right, so the weekend, the Pope's funeral had me feel kind of hopeful, right? And we had thoughts about a Filipino Pope, perhaps, when the conclave begins. And then, of course, Saturday night in Vancouver, the tragedy there. I mean, I didn't hear about the tragedy in Vancouver until Sunday morning. And then, the bits of information came very sporadically. News outlets in the United States did not cover it hardly. I mean, some did. They gave it the minute and a half treatment. Oh, here's a car ramming. 11 people died. 11 people. It wasn't a gun death. It was a car ramming. We've seen these things before. And, I laud or applaud the BBC for giving people the news about what's going on or what went on in Vancouver. Because CNN, barely a mention. It was like on the crawl. No video. I mean, it was on the crawl. Local stations that have Filipino communities, mostly in California, were playing up the news or reporting on the news. There was a man in Seattle who brought a group of dancers, young Filipino American dancers, to Canada for the festival, and he posted something on Instagram, and I happen to have met them at Devon Cabanilla, the Filipino way, the double L, Cabanilla. And Devon was shook. He was safe, but he described the scene, which is horrific, right? You had hundreds of people there in what Devon said was a 7-block area, food trucks. There were people, very few, he said he saw no police presence. There are barricades, but no police presence. And later at a press conference, thank goodness for the BBC, because when there was no news going on, the BBC covered the press conference. And the press conference, for these kind of matters, when there's a violent event that takes place, especially on the weekend when there's nothing going on, news outlets are all over this because they want news, and they'll cover it. Thank goodness the BBC was all over this. They showed the press conference with the acting police chief, Steve Rai, an Asian American, RAI. They had the Asian American mayor of Vancouver, Kenneth Sim, speaking, and they got the information out. We learned only later last night on Sunday the name of the suspect, Kai G. Adam Low, L-O, 30, sounds like an Asian American name, charged with 8 counts of second-degree murder in a video appearance on Sunday, hours after he was arrested on the scene. He has not yet entered a plea, according to reports that I've seen. But this is a big deal in Canada, right? I mean, when you get an instance where 11 people are killed in a mass killing event, right? In anywhere. I mean, it doesn't have to be 20 or 30 we talk about it, 40 or 50 we talk. 11, this is a big deal. Is it possible that it is a minority community that no one really cares about, who everyone thinks is somewhat invisible? It was a Filipino heritage festival, and they were honoring Lapu-Lapu. And I mentioned this in my column in the Inquirer.net. I mentioned it that Lapu-Lapu, I mean, people just would, for the white media, they would just skip over and not even name the festival. They'll call it, a Filipino heritage event. But Lapu-Lapu is significant. It's like not mentioning Columbus Day on Columbus's day, right? I mean, it's that significant. Or George Washington's birthday on President's Day. Lapu-Lapu was the man who killed Magellan, Ferdinand Magellan, April 27th, 1521. That's why they had the festival on Saturday night going into the 27th. That was the significance of the day. Lapu-Lapu is like Filipinos' George Washington. Now, we know Lapu-Lapu did not end the Spanish attempt to colonize the Philippines, and eventually the Spanish did colonize the Philippines for hundreds of years until the Americans colonized the Philippines. I mean, that's something that people don't usually understand, or know. They don't even remember. Oh, we know about the Spanish-American War. We know about 1898. The Philippines was sold to the U.S., but they don't realize 1899, the Filipinos fought back. There was a Philippine-American War, which resulted in the colonization of the Philippines. But this is history that people don't care about, but they should know about it. And that's why when I wrote my column, I said, let's put this in a Filipino context. Yes, 11 people were killed. I haven't seen any reports identifying the people, but they were there for that Filipino-American Filipino Heritage Festival. There, I said, I made a mistake. I said Filipino-American. They're Filipino-Canadian, and I honor that. And please forgive me, Filipino-Canadians. There are a lot. There are. I got this from the the British Columbia paper. 38,600 residents of Filipino heritage in 2021 in Vancouver. 5.9% of the city's total population. That's a pretty sizable crowd. 5%. That's like there's like of Asian Americans, right? 5% of the Asian American community, Filipinos in the nation. A sizable Filipino community. And to celebrate Lapu-Lapu, that's a big deal. The resilience of a people to ward off colonization. It's important. A little bit of history. People bring out the food trucks, the lumpias, the skewers with chicken and beef and whatever, right? It's a fun thing. The music's there. People are selling Filipino garb. The dancers were there. And then Kai G. Adam Low, age 30, is alleged to have driven his SUV into the crowd. There are 11 deaths at this point, could be more. We know that there are dozens killed, and we have just people talking about, the scene, right? I mean, I went to the BBC, And there was a man who's describing it. Josep Varde is a food truck owner. He said, this guy, he killed some of my customers, he said. They were waiting for their buns. He was selling bao buns at the festival. I stepped outside my food truck and I just saw bodies underneath people's food trucks, husbands crying out for their wives or their kids. It was just horrible. I mean, this is the kind of coverage of these things that are usually typical. You hardly saw any of it because I don't know what they were covering on Sunday. Trump's 100 days? I mean, that's a big deal. We're not quite yet at the 100th day. We're at 99, day 99. But maybe they just didn't have video. I mean, some people did. But I saw, like I said, local stations cover it. But when national outlets did not cover it, I was wondering. I had to go to the BBC to find out what was going on. And then the press conference, the police said, hey, we had no intel, which is hard to imagine because just a year and a half ago, they had a violent incident at the Vancouver Chinatown where I believe a man had someone had an arm hacked off. But then the mayor said, we can't create a police state here. Yeah, I know you can't create a police state, but you should have had some police presence there. And Devin Cabanilla, let's say it the Filipino way, was on Instagram. He said, hey, 7 blocks long, there was like a little barricade and some volunteers with orange vests or safety vests, but we did not see a police presence. And that was kind of sad because if there were a police presence, then maybe a suspect would not have seen this as such a soft target because that's what it was. The first thing police say when they hear an incident like this, they say, oh, we know it's not a terror event. Well, yeah, not a terroristic event in terms of the definition of ideology and, a political statement, but it was a terror event. People were terrorized. The Filipino community is terrorized. The Filipino community, not just in Vancouver, but everywhere, terrorized. So, I'm not buying what the police are saying. No, we didn't have intel. We policed 3,200 events, and we had nothing. We knew nothing about. Yeah, they're good citizens. They're good people. You still, knowing that there's going to be hundreds of people in a public space, you should have had some presence, maybe 1 or 2 cruisers or something. So that was the response from the police chief, Stephen Rye. But Vancouver Mayor Ken Sim knew, well, they all knew about it. Stephen Rye, the police chief, said, he admitted that the suspect, this guy, Kaiji Adam Lowe, has had run-ins with the police over the last 12 years. And they stemmed from what he called health-related issues. In general, he called it health-related issues. He did say mental health at some point in the press conference, but he was trying not to point, well, not to get too specific about the suspect. But Vancouver Mayor Ken Sim said, he went a little bit further in acknowledging the problem in general without connecting the suspect to any specific issue, mental health wise. But this is what Sim said. We do need mandatory care for people with significant mental health challenges or substance abuse disorder. It's the humane thing to do. We have people on the streets who cannot direct their own care, and they're causing harm to themselves and other people. That jumped out at me when I was listening to the press conference yesterday afternoon. And I put it in my column on Inquirer.net. You can go to Inquirer.net It's the global website for Filipinos everywhere, part of the Filipino diaspora. Sim said, this has been going on for too long throughout many administrations. We need that mandatory care faster. We need more of it, and we need it faster. We cannot take a government approach to this. Lives are on the line. Communities are at stake. And I would challenge any elected officials to go to the Filipino community and say, we're working on it, And it might take a little longer, That community is going through a really difficult time, and we owe it to them. We owe it to Vancouverites to go a lot faster on this. And then he was prompted, don't we need tangible action? And he said, yes, we want tangible action. And of course he's saying it because he means it, but it's also a federal election in Canada today. And all of Canada will be thinking about this when they go to the polls, because this is the big news story. He said we should be thinking about it on Monday. We should be thinking about it on Tuesday. No matter what party that person represents who wins the election, we still need that help. Which I said, yeah, fine for the living, but what for the families of those grieving, for the 11 dead, the dozens injured? What are we going to do for them? And it hardens me that Mark Carney, who is running for, the post, he's running for election, taking over for Trudeau. He's the liberal, and in the Colombian, there he was, Mark Carney, liberal leader, lighting a candle at a memorial. He was in Vancouver, apparently. And, if you were the leader of a country and 11 people died, that's a responsible thing to do. And Carney said he visited Sunday. He canceled his first campaign event and 2 major rallies on the final day of the votes. And he said, last night, families lost a sister, brother, a mother, a father, a son, or a daughter. Those families are living every family's nightmare. And he joined British Columbia Premier David Eby and the community leaders Sunday in Vancouver. Sunday night, they're going to continue to have vigils. The assault was reminiscent of an attack in 2018 when a man used a van to kill 10 pedestrians in Toronto. So this is a big deal, and the officials are calling this the darkest day in Vancouver history. I think as a Filipino, I'm a Filipino American. There are Filipino Americans up there in Vancouver at that festival. As I said, some dancers, Filipino American dancers, were at the festival, and they were all safe. They escaped without injury. And the people they were in touch with, the Filipino American National Historical Society folks who were there, they're fine. But some others are not. At least 11 people dead, still dozens injured. And I applaud Mark Carney for knowing what a leader does when a tragedy like this strikes. Meanwhile, in the United States of America, the so-called leader of the free world took the opportunity to taunt Canadians as they go to vote. Didn't make any mention to the Filipinos. I guess he doesn't care about the 4 million Filipinos here in the United States, because he must know that the 4 million Filipinos in the United States have some kind of connection to the Canadians, the Filipinos globally. That's just the way, the Filipino diaspora has worked, that we all have some kind of connection to each other. Or we feel it as like this is part of our extended Filipino family experience to go through an international diaspora, whether it's Canada or the US. I don't even think Donald Trump knows there are 4 or 5 million Filipinos in America. I mean, earlier I said, yeah, 4 million Filipinos, part of the 27 million Asian Americans in the United States. But this is what Donald Trump wrote on Truth Social. Instead of like extending some condolences or sympathy. Well, we know how he acted at the Pope's funeral. He says, "Good luck to the great people of Canada. Elect the man who has the strength and wisdom to cut your taxes in half, increase your military power for free to the highest level in the world, have your car, steel, aluminum, lumber, energy, and all other businesses quadruple in size with zero tariffs or taxes. If Canada becomes the cherished 51st state of the United States of America." What the? I mean, people don't know what he was talking about. I mean, he said, "No more artificially drawn line from many years ago. Look how beautiful this landmass would be. Free access with no border, all positives with no negatives. It was meant to be." So who is he talking about? Who in Canada supports the annexation of Canada? Who supports the aggressive move of the United? I think this is Donald Trump wanting to be Vladimir Putin. Donald Trump wanting to see Canada as his Ukraine, as his Crimea. He just wants to take it over because no one has said anything like, "Oh, yeah, we want to be the 51st state." Canada doesn't want to be the 51st state. It's part of Donald Trump's fantasy world. I mean, from that Truth Social comment, it's like, hey, there's got to be someone there in Canada who supports the American colonization of Canada. No, there isn't. I can't think of it. Not Mark Carney, who got a shot in the arm because, you know, the Liberal Party was sort of sagging, not being seen as being very effective, but they know how to stand up to Donald Trump. And it's a source of pride. I think Carney looks to be the winner up there, but it's just, it comes at the coincidence of a tragedy where Mark Carney is showing what a true leader should do in a national tragedy. You bring people together. You bring people together and say, I know people lost a son, the daughter. We're Canadians. Let's stand up. Let's support. Let's embrace each other. That's what a leader does. And just by comparison, what does Donald Trump do? He knows this is an election. He puts this out on his social media, which is just saying, "Good luck to the great people of Canada. Elect the man who has the strength and wisdom to cut your taxes in half, increase your military power for free." And that's if Canada becomes the cherished 51st state of the United States of America. And there is no one in Canada who is running for office who wants the United States to take over Canada, who wants Donald Trump in charge of Canada. That's a crazy thing. But I guess this is the way that this is Donald Trump on day 99, continuing the bullying. That's what he knows, even though he is, the polls which were released starting this weekend on Sunday, showed Donald Trump is the worst president after the 100-day benchmark in the history of modern polling. In 7 decades, no one has been as low and has been as far down the polls as Donald Trump. His approval rating in the 40s, his disapproval rating up in the 50s. No matter what poll you look at, nothing is good. The only thing that he has going for him is that, okay, yeah, he went after the lowest hanging fruit, which is the immigration issue. And, all right, he shut down the border. That was really kind of an easy thing to do because all he had to do was shut down a website so people couldn't apply, so they wouldn't come. And then he puts the military on the border. I mean, really, it's not that hard to do what he did to cut the flow. Much harder is what he hasn't done, which is to try to fix a broken immigration system. Oh, no, he's not into that. He's into doing things like sending back people to their countries without due process, which is against the Constitution. Everyone is allowed due process. Sending back young, like 2-year-old, 4-year-old American citizens who cannot speak for themselves, cannot make the decision for themselves, but they create these situations where they have to deport the mother. And a mother was deported back to Honduras with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, both American citizens, the 4-year-old with a rare cancer and cut off from the kind of treatment and medication. That is just mean and unconstitutional. And you're going to see that action disallowing the family to stay together, to be part of, certainly that's going to be part of some litigation. But you're seeing, what you're seeing is Donald Trump always pushing, overreaching, and showing how he really doesn't care about making the situation right. He wants to polarize, he wants to divide, and I guess really the hope I had that maybe he would discover his humanity after attending a funeral for the Pope, and there's a homily talking about the torch of hope, funeral for the Pope. Nah, I mean, same old Trump. But the grades are in. The polls after 100 days are in. He is flunking. If the election were held today, I don't know if, well, see, this is the tricky part. People should quit him, but they don't. And that's the thing that puzzles everyone, because they look at his numbers and they say he should be going down, but he stays afloat. And that's the worrisome thing about our democracy, because this is not necessarily about just Trump. It's about all those who hang on and want to be part of his, what is it? His corrupt, anti-democratic, anti-democracy, anti-rule of law way of governing. And it says more about us as a people than about him. And I think that's the genuinely sad thing about these 100 days, because look, 100 days is an artificial thing. And people always say, okay, first 100 days he gets an F. Maybe, but there's some people who say, oh, I'll give him a B minus. But maybe he, they're looking at the next 100 days. But frankly, the next 100 days doesn't look good, because the next 100 days could be when tariffs hit. And Mr. Tariff, or Tariff Man as he's been called, is not very clear about what's going to happen. And we already know that, okay, people, companies, car manufacturers, they've built up their inventories. They're even saying, hey, pre-tariff prices, come by. I mean, everyone is using it as a sales thing. But when the inventory dries up, is Donald Trump going to be seen as an economic hero or the economic villain for an American recession? So we'll see. I mean, the best thing that the Republicans have going for them is that the Democrats haven't figured out how to respond. Haven't figured out how to respond to Donald Trump. I saw J.B. Pritzker campaigning in New Hampshire. He sounds pretty good. People didn't like him, very much when he was considered among, the other candidates. Back when Biden stepped down and then handpicked Kamala Harris, Pritzker's name was out there. Buttigieg, other people's names were out there. Newsom, and he doesn't show up very well compared to some of those others, like when you put him side by side. But when you just listen to him, and he's alone, and he's the only one who sounds strong, and he's the only one who has the wherewithal in terms of being somewhat independently wealthy to tackle the oligarchs who seem to, it's money politics. When you can finance your own political voice, you might be able to say, have the wherewithal to stand up to the Donald Trumps and the Elon Musk and the tech bros and whatever. Just a first impression of seeing J.B. Pritzker out there speaking to a crowd in New Hampshire. I don't know. We'll see. Midterms in a year or two. See the campaign, what develops. But at this point, I would say it doesn't look good for Trump. But he has defied logic. He's defied the polls. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, that mental health issue, I want to bring that up again, because I don't know what we're going to see coming out of Canada, but I'd be curious. How do you deal with the fact that there are people being released? There are people out there. We have this issue in the United States, when you have out in public, people slashing, people pushing people off subway platforms, that kind of thing. And they find, there's a mental health issue. And you can't get people to take care of themselves. You can't force people. How do you make it work so that we're all taken care of in the most humane way? And maybe Canada can figure that out. Like I said, when I wrote my column on the Vancouver issue, dealing with what the officials were saying at the press conference yesterday, And when I heard Ken Sim, the mayor, really cop to it and say, yeah, this is a problem. I don't know what we're going to do here, but we do need mandatory care for people with significant mental health challenges. It's a humane thing to do. We have people on the streets who cannot direct their own care, and they're causing harm to themselves and other people. And that's important to acknowledge and to see a mayor say, yeah, we want tangible action. That's important. And if there's going to be a change in how a nation deals with something like this, Canada's the place. You look at Canada to show the way. You wouldn't look at America to show the way. America is not the leader in this sort of thing. So more vigils for the victims. There's 11, it seems, based on reports, 11 seems to be the number that's holding. But there are other victims, their family members, also the people who are injured. Dozens there injured. So we're just going to have to see. But the area where a lot of the vigils are taking place, it's around that south side of Vancouver, around East 42nd and Fraser Streets. So Catholic churches in that area. I'm just trying to see if they mentioned a church in any of the local coverage. But it's just interesting to read the coverage, the local coverage, because this is more than just a local story. This should have been seen as, well, I mean, it's a national tragedy, right? The same way you had the guy running in to the Mardi Gras event in New Orleans recently. It should have played a bigger part in the coverage, and I applaud the BBC for sharing the press conference and really trying to go beyond the horror of the ramming of an SUV into a crowd and try to get to the root cause, right? I mean, yeah, a situation like this in terms of news, you want to know how many people are dead. You want to know how many people are injured. You want to know, where were the police? We got our answer. They weren't there in numbers. They didn't have the intel. They said, no, we didn't hear about it. We didn't know. Is it that, or is it that the community is so quiet that they become an inadvertent soft target? That's what I was worried about. So it's sad. We pray. Filipinos giving our love and support to a community, a distant Filipino Canadian community, just a Filipino community. Because, like I said, there were Filipino Americans there from Seattle, members of the Filipino American National Historical Society. They were up there. So our hearts go out to them in Vancouver, because the Filipino community, and I know this from writing for the Inquirer.net, it's a global diaspora community worldwide, and everywhere where there are Filipinos, they're grieving. They're grieving and hoping that the injured get well, hoping that those grieving and mourning find some kind of peace and solace after this moment of grief. So, and hoping that the Canadian folks heed what the mayor of Vancouver is saying. This is not a governmental problem, right? We got to solve it as a society and do the most humane thing to take care of people who have been released to the streets, because what's at stake is the well-being of communities like the Filipino community in Vancouver right now, most immediately. All right, that's it for me today. Cut it short. I think the Warriors play tonight. I hope the Warriors win. I'd like to see them win. You know, they had a lot of Canadian players. They traded away maybe the best Canadian player, Andrew Wiggins. But now let's hope the Warriors take care of things. Oh, and then baseball fans, did you see the Giants play yesterday? Oh my God, they won on a play that I would be capable of. You know, hitting a ball 2 feet, running the first, and then having the fielder overthrow the first baseman. Then you run to second, and then the fielder on first, you know, throws to third because, you know, the runner's trying to advance to third, and then overthrows the third baseman. And then the runner, in this case, Elliot Ramos of the Giants, heads for home, and he's got it clear and free, and he scores a winning run, walk-off. He slides head first on his belly, and if you played Little League baseball or any kind of youth baseball where our skills are not that good, and you can turn a 2 foot hit into a home run, an inside the park home run, I put in quotes because it's really a single and a couple of throwing errors. But if you have played youth baseball, you appreciate what Elliot Ramos and the San Francisco Giants did yesterday. And that was probably the highlight in a grim weekend where we considered Vancouver, we considered the Pope's funeral, Donald Trump asleep at the funeral. 100 days tomorrow. I'll talk about the 100 days tomorrow. All right. And what that means. 100 days. Artificial. But we make a big deal about it. All right. We close. Because, you know, I say things that are critical of Donald Trump. Someone said, oh, Donald Trump doesn't even know to wear a black suit. I didn't mind his blue suit. Should have been black, but it should have been dark. But, you know, maybe he didn't have a black suit that fit. Maybe he thinks black is, like, you know, not his color. I don't know. But I was going to let him slide on the blue suit. Maybe if he wore a black tie. I mean, Melania knew to wear black. I mean, maybe she's wearing black because she's married to Trump. But I don't, you know, but his texting during the services and falling asleep. Oh, he falls asleep all the time. I mean, he's 78, soon to be 79. So, you know, it was maybe a 2 diaper event for him. You know, maybe a 3. You know, maybe he just wasn't ready for it. Anyway, he flew right back after meeting Zelensky, and then, of course, I don't think that meant anything really. Shoulda, didn't. There's hope. And then what did he do today? He went on this tweet rant about Canada being the 51st state. Oh, hasn't lost his touch. Still the same old Donald. 100 days, 99th day, more of the same. All right, so I criticize him, but with love. With love. I mean, he's our president, right? With love. I don't hate the man. I want him to do better. Really. I mean, he needs to be persuaded. I thought maybe when I see him with Zelensky at the Pope's funeral, I thought maybe he could be persuaded to be a nice guy. He said in a tweet that I think I'm being tapped. I got to deal differently with Putin. I don't know. But we approach it with love. We approach it all with love. Because as we send it out, it comes back twofold. That's just the way it works. We like to end with a little loving kindness. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. We pray for those of the tragedy of that Vancouver incident. Pray for the souls of the departed. Pray for the injured. Till next time, Emil Guillermo here.